Are there any rules that are kind of non-starters for you? Like you'll never put them in your leagues, and if if a friend of yours said, "Hey, I've got this new dynasty league, do you want to go in?" and you see this rules in there, you'd say, "Yeah, no, thanks."
Yeah, I think one of the big things is the kickers and defenses in particular, just because they are so random. They are so random on a season that like I understand like fantasy football is luck. Like there is some skill to it, but a lot of it is luck. And when we can take some of that out, that is kind of what I want to build around.
Welcome to Dynasty Compass. I am your host, Jeff Blaylock, the other Jeff B from Football Guys. It is so good to have everyone here with us today, whether you are watching on YouTube or listening to us on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform. This show exists to help you become a better Dynasty manager and to win your leagues. And every once in a while, we do something that's not quite aimed at you as a manager, but maybe aimed at you as a dynasty or league commissioner. And that is what we're going to do today. I have one of the social media spaces most. I was going to say several different things at once, and it just all kind of crashed there. One of social media's favorite commissioner content guys. This is Luke, the BOAT Commish. Welcome to the show, Luke. So good to see you, and can't wait to dive into this, and let's talk commissionering.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to get started.
All right, man. Well, let's just sort of set this up for those who aren't familiar with you. You are the BOAT Commish. Where did that name come from, and how has that become your brand?
Absolutely. So I started my first dynasty league is called the BOAT Dynasty League, and it started off. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but at the Blake Bortles interview, he's talking about like what are you gonna do after football, and he's like, I don't, or if you didn't play football, and he was like, I don't know, I'd work construction and have a cig or something like that. And it was just like, so just not. And then there was like a brand of like being the boat rather than the goat of Tom Brady. And then the Jags actually went very far. I don't know exactly what year that was. I'm blanking on that one, but so it actually started as kind of like the Blake Bortles, but definitely not a favorite player by any means, but I liked being the boat. And then I created the BOAT Dynasty League, and then that just became the BOAT Commish.
Got it. So was that your first commissionering then, that particular dynasty league, or does that go back a little farther than that?
It goes a little bit further than that. My first league was just a redraft league. On ESPN. That was the first time being commissioned. I loved it and didn't look back. I kind of started as there's so many, you get into so many leagues with like your friends and you see how things kind of shape in their own leagues. And though that was just something that I was like, I know I can do this. I know I can do a great job in this. And I know there are certain rules that I just didn't like within theirs. And rather than kind of going through the voting thing, it was kind of like, I want to create my own. So, and I haven't looked back since then.
Well, I assume that it didn't go flawlessly, this first league that you read. What were some of the earliest challenges that you faced as a rookie commissioner?
Yes, as a rookie commissioner, the payment one that comes to mind is it. And this one is so different than probably other people, but the payment. So we had one manager that joined my league. He came in, so our plan right there when we were young. We weren't doing Apple Pay, Venmo, or anything like that. It was just cash. So I collected all the funds. Everyone was good except for one manager. He came with no money. He came with jerseys, and these jerseys were They were like the fake ones that you'd get on like DH Gate, wherever you get your fake jerseys and things like that. And he was selling them to the other managers of like to pay for the league. And that was just one thing that I was just like, what are we doing? What do we do? Like, just come with like and it was, I don't remember the exact cost, but it was like a $25 league or something like that, where it's like, I mean, come on, man, you've had all this time to build up into it. Like, just, yeah, like, let's figure it out here. But he eventually sold one of his jerseys for like the $25 or whatever that fee was, or a couple jerseys. And then we got to draft him, but it was like that one of like just figuring out payment beforehand has kind of we've came a long way, let's just say.
Yeah, I mean, long before there was Venmo and Apple Pay, there were, chickens and eggs and fruits and vegetables. And so I guess, knockoff jerseys would fall into that barter space just as well. Yep. So, how did you evolve, from that early day of watching your friend try to pawn off his jerseys so he could pay his $25 entry fee into your league? Into one of the fantasy spaces, foremost, commissioner content guys. How did that evolution take place for you?
Yeah, one of the big things was like the resources that you got to see. Like, there are so many great resources that are blogs, that are like articles and things like that. And I really wanted a space where like really creating content is like for the user, like, and they can come to me with questions. And even if I don't have those answers, then I'm able to then get those answers in some way. There are so many people that are so creative, and I find myself being pretty creative within the space as well, of like what we can do within our leagues, like even like draft picks and things like that, of having like a lottery and things of that nature, of just fun avenues that we can continue to grow in. And so really just seeing the resources and just wanting to become that like niche commissioner. That's what I really wanted to strive to be. And it's been great. The feedback that I'm getting from people, and just like the amount of I don't like content that they also bring to the table has just been really beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, it's really something, especially for folks who have probably grown up on ESPN leagues or perhaps a different kind they were invited in, kind of followed the standard settings. There's not much adventurousness there, and to realize that there is this whole world of other options and other rules and other settings and other league formats, not just in Dynasty, but just across the board. It's really something to watch people kind of discover that. Usually one rule or one league or one thing at a time, but it is really something, as you say, that to see people in content space now really starting to address commissioners and commissioner issues and get into the rule book and get into league constitutions and the sorts of things that have nothing whatsoever to do with hot takes on players, but yet in my mind, that's some of the most important stuff, because if you don't get the league right, you don't get the rules and the settings right, it's not gonna last. People aren't gonna stay. You be replacing managers over and over and over again. You struggle to get a guy to bring his jerseys to pay his fees to the league, however, whatever that happens to be. But man, if you could go back and talk to Luke, the rookie commissioner, as he prepared to take the reins of his first league, what would your advice to him be?
Yeah, I think the advice that I would really strive to give Luke is be creative within your league. Create the league that you want. What I have come to find is managers will want to be in your leagues. The right managers will want to be in your leagues when you create that league how you want, how you see fit. I think a lot of it in even in the workspace of like, it comes from the top. It comes from the top of like, if you are passionate about like your league, if you're passionate of whatever you do, it trickles down to the managers, it trickles down to supervisor, it trickles down to everyone. So that is one thing that I just have really gone on, is create the league that you want, and the right managers will come.
So let's talk then about what I would call golden rules. You may have some other idea of what that might be, but if you came down from the mountaintop with a tablet or tablets of golden rules for commissioners, what would some of those be? We can go through as many of these as you may have.
I would start from the first one. I think that I try to hit this home all the time, is have league bylaws. I think these are so important within your leagues. You're able to send these out when you're recruiting. Managers can look at these to make sure that this is the league for them. Bylaws are my number one. Another one would be rules in season. They have to be unanimous. There can't be a majority vote where you have some managers being upset over a rule change that kind of changes the outcomes of certain situations. Paying for league dues, that would be another one. Paying for league dues when you're trading away future capital. That is a huge one if you're going to retain everyone that's in your league, so no one can just walk away freely, and then you have to make up that spot, and they also have to pay that like orphan payment. And then another one is inverse order of the max points for rookie spots. Those are I would say the four that I really try to hit home. And yeah, so number one would be bylaws, hands down.
I've seen a lot of leagues, and I've been guilty of this myself in a couple of cases where I was either lazy or just didn't have the time to do what I really wanted to do. We had to start the season because that happens. Mm-hmm. Just relying on your league settings within the application that it runs on, whether it is Sleeper or ESPN or God help you, MFL or wherever it happens to be. Those aren't your rules. Those are just settings. There are things that can't be contemplated by that. How do you, and I say this knowing full well that you have got an online project right now where you are crowdsourcing the wisdom behind what would be kind of a idealized league constitution or bylaws. But aside from that particular project, since not everyone has the reach to crowdsource their entire league bylaws, what would be your suggestion for commissioners? Like, he's right. Hey, we should put some bylaws together. How does one start that process?
Yeah, I mean, when I start the process, I mean, you can go on a Word document. You can do within Sleeper. It has the commissioner notes. Those are just a few ways that you can do it. But the way that I would start it out with is like, I have league dues. I have who the commissioner is, how to reach them. Then if you have like divisions, put them, or put like the managers that are in there. And then you just you go down from there of like what you want within your league that isn't in the settings, like what you said of your league settings. So like if you have, I mean, like I said, the max points 4, paying for future dues, things like that. You kind of go down, and there are so many resources out there. Again, like I'm not the only one that has all the answers, but I'm always there to try to help you build those as well. But yeah, bylaws are an important one, and I think that they make for a smooth league, and that people can all go back to and just look over what they can and cannot do.
Yeah, to me, the trick is that they don't have to be comprehensive. They don't have to cover every possible thing that might happen, because that would take an encyclopedia. We've no way of knowing exactly what's going to happen in a season, but they need to be able to cover the basic questions and the basic conflicts that arise. And if you are commissionering and you've been in leagues before, you've seen a lot of these conflicts already arise, and so you know kind of what to anticipate. But also, I mean, you say, man, there are a lot of resources that are available online. I'm going to put in the show notes a couple of examples of bylaws that I use in my leagues. Look, if you've got one or two of those you want to contribute to that cause as well, I'll put them in there too, so that, if nothing else, you can start with what we've got and then make the changes that you need to get to where you want to go. And it may get you some ideas as well. So I'm with that because, at the very least, when you have the bylaws, you have the ability as a commissioner to make a decision and point to rules and say, this is what we all agreed to.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's perfect. And I actually did a bylaw build along, and like kind of what we spoke about before, but that was just an awesome experience to just hear what other people are doing in their own leagues. Cause there are things that I have in my bylaws that aren't even in other people's, and other people were reaching out like, did you have this? And I didn't. And it's just a fun way for me to just really kind of make sure that I have everything in my league, but you don't need it. Like what you said, when rules come up, even the Brendan Sorsby situation, that was a beast. That was an absolute beast of these kind of need to happen pretty quick. All right, are we moving him to 27, or are we throwing out 27 draft picks? Are we just throwing him in waivers? So it's just things like that okay, now the NFL corrected that situation for us.
Yes.
But now, let's add that into our bylaws. What are we going to do when the next supplemental draft happens and things like that? So it's an ongoing document, and you work with your leagues on it, and it's a fun process.
Yeah, it's important. I think you've hit on it. It needs to be a living document. This is not something that you write one time and you're done, and that's the end of it, because there's always going to be things that happen. For leagues that have been around for a while, when COVID came along, that was something that hadn't been anticipated before. We had needed rules about that before, and I still have residual rules in my bylaws that arose from that era. And if your league's been around long enough, you may actually have supplemental draft rules, because this has come up before. It has been a while since a fantasy relevant player came up in a supplemental draft, but it has happened. So yeah, I mean, these are the sorts of things that you may not be able to anticipate at the moment, but once it's happened, you better go, we should have something in place for this. You mentioned changing in rules, and you, in one of your golden rules, was if you have a rule change that you have to make during the season, that has to be unanimous. And I think that's very smart, because you could be conceivably talking about things that affect outcomes, at least moving forward. We actually, in my rules, my league's constitutions, we have that provision in place already. It has to be unanimous. And in fact, we specifically say that even if it is unanimous, there are still things that you can't change in the middle of the season. Like you can't add a flex spot to a lineup, or you can't switch from one kind of scoring to another. You can't take away a bench spot, but you could add one, kind of a situation. So that even at unanimity, there's still some guardrails that say, no, this really is something we got to take up afterward. But COVID was an example of something that we had to make a change during, basically during the season. We had to kind of make that up as we went along. What would be, in your experience, what have been some rules that you've had to change in the middle of the season, and hopefully you had full agreement to do that?
Yeah. So in the middle of a season, there was the one situation that comes to mind is that bill that it was the Damar Hamlin 2023, where we had to figure out what we were doing with our league, because that changed outcomes of championship games. That was
championship weekend.
Yeah, that was what? That was week 17. Was that week 17? Week 17. So those type of things that you need to decide on, because that was not a fun fantasy thing. Everyone is excited about the championship, and then you're deciding whether or not to go next week where you have some people that aren't going to be playing, and we decided because there weren't, like, we didn't have like the Josh Allen in the championship game, as many people did. So we got lucky with that. But there were some other key players, but it made more sense to move it back 1 week in our league, in one of my leagues.
I was fortunate in my leagues. Either it wasn't really an issue from a scoring or championship standpoint, or there were some other circumstances of that. But I will say, just as kind of an aside, that I felt very fortunate that in every one of the leagues that I was a commissioner of at that time, all of us in the league, our first concern really was with Damar Hamlin and his health, and that this is a game of real people. They have real health issues. They have real situations. They have real lives. They have real families, and that this was bigger than football. And I think that even if we had a thornier matter with it, we would have worked our way through what we needed to do. Coincidentally, though, the only person who had Josh Allen in any of my leagues in that situation was me. And I'm looking at the score, and I just said to the guys, I'm like, it wouldn't matter. I mean, unless Josh Allen's going to throw 7 touchdown passes in the second half of this game, I'm not going to win this anyway. And so we don't need to do anything about it today, but we do need to put something in place so that if this happens again and it's more consequential, and we are literally forced to have to make a decision of which guy is going to end up winning this championship because of the decision we're going to make today, let's put some rules in place, or at least some guidelines in place, so that we can make that decision if it has to come up again.
Absolutely.
I do think you mentioned also paying dues for trading future capital. That's one that I have not been as good at enforcing as I need to. That has come back to bite me. I'm sure pretty much anyone listening who's been a commissioner has had it come back to bite them. What's your advice to actually enforcing that rule as a commissioner, and mechanically, how do you make that work for like an in-season trade where if someone needs to go into a lineup later that day?
And this one differs with me, and I've spoke a bit on it on Twitter, of just like, if it's a home league, I usually know all of the guys that I'm in the league with. I'm fine with you sending me like, hey, I'll pay you on Friday or something like that. That's by no means is that like a strict rule. But for public leagues, what I like to do is have like the 24-hour commish approval, and just having that be kind of the law of, I'm going to hold this trade until that payment is actually in. It's not always a fun conversation with people, because they just they're excited about their trade. They're excited about the trade that they made, and they don't want to pay the league dues that second. So it is kind of, you just have to be consistent with it at the start of the season. You just know that you will need to pay as soon as you trade that first round capital.
When you say reaching out to them, I assume you mean, is it just through the platform that you're using, or do you insist on additional contact information from something like that? You would text or email or call or something like that?
Yeah, I personally don't. Depending on the league. Home leagues, obviously, you have their contact information. Public leagues, I am just contacting them like direct DM. Otherwise, if we've gotten to the point where we want to do emails and things like that, because that's another form of communication. Of if people are interested in a different type of communication, whether like you have a Discord or something like that, to really engage with your leagues. There's so many ways that you can communicate with them, but direct DM is usually my go-to.
And I think the other golden rule you mentioned was the inverse order of the most points for rookie spots. Could you describe what that is and why you settled on that versus other ways of accomplishing the same outcome, or at least getting the same draft order?
And there are a ton of ways to do it, but max points for you are getting the 101 is the worst team in your league. That is one of the biggest things. There are like different, I have one league that does a lottery. And that one, it isn't where the biggest loser doesn't get the first round pick all the time. And so the max points for is just making sure that the worst team is getting that first overall pick, that Jordan Love, or the Jeremiah Love. Sorry, excuse me.
Right.
And so just making sure that it's kind of going in that order. So the top six are obviously in the playoffs. They're fighting for the championship, and then that bottom six in your leagues, or how many you have in the consolation or toilet bowl, they are going in inverse order of the max points for.
When you said you got a league that's got a lottery in it, what was the impetus for putting that in place? Was there some tankage going on, or was it just was there some other reason why there's a lottery in place for the number one overall pick?
Yeah. So this one is my absolute favorite league. It's my home Dynasty league, and this league is the most fun. This is where I get the most creative, and actually where my inspiration for the BOAT Commish and kind of highlighting our league rules and things like that really came into place. So we actually started the league with a lottery, because that was just one thing that I've seen that wasn't max points for, that seemed like a fun way of doing it. So I have a bingo cage that we actually roll for our lottery date. And so it is an absolute blast. So what we do is, we have our lottery, everyone knows it, and then consolation bracket actually means something. It goes 75% lottery odds in the regular season. So the loser can get, I think, about like 30% of something like that. And then the consolation bracket, you can get up to 11% on top of that. So it's a fun way to do it. It is a way that keeps everyone engaged. And so what we do in my home league, Dynasty League, we do the lottery date. And so within that lottery date, we also go over league rules. So it is just a fun way to get your league just engaged and have a great time together, and go over rules and then see who gets the first overall pick. This past year, I should have gotten the first overall pick. I had the most odds, and I got passed up twice. So I got the third pick, and we went with Carnell Tate, which I'm super excited for. But yeah, it was a fun one.
Yeah, I mean, Carnell Tate's not bad. He's just not, Jeremiah Love. But he's also not
Correct.
Fernando Mendoza. So, we're okay there too. Mm-hmm. When you're thinking about, we've talked about rules that you want in there and things you want commissioners to do. Are there any sort of what I would call thou shalt not rules that you would recommend for commissioners, either for their own behavior or for the leagues themselves?
One thing that I have never liked is vetoes. It's just one situation where I totally understand it. I understand why you would have it, but it goes into a bigger discussion. The vetoes, it's just a toxic way to shut down trades. It absolutely turns into, if I were to reject your trade, Jeff, then you would want to reject mine. And maybe
right.
That's obviously not you, but like it is. It
might be.
Yeah, it might be. Who knows? But like the amount of work that you take to get these trades done, it can take weeks to try to get a trade done, and then for someone else to just veto, it's just a very toxic way to play. So the vetoes one, I am so against. And if there's real collusion, that's where the commissioner steps in. It doesn't need to be where the league, because you'll definitely hear from the league if there is a trade that's like, this is an awful trade. And I've had that, and it turns out to be like a newer manager and just not really understanding the value and things like that, which there is a learning curve, but it's not collusion. So vetoes would be one that I am so against. And then the other one that I would really get into is just the no trade deadline. That is one that I personally love. I understand it in redraft. By all means, have a trade deadline. You don't need to retain value. You're not getting draft picks, but in Dynasty, it helps out the rebuilders so much more than the contenders. I remember Ezekiel Elliott. There was he was on his like last season where he was actually somewhat valuable in like the I think it was 2024. I believe so. I think it was 2024 where Zeke was actually valuable in the last part of his career. And I paid a second for him, and I was happy to do that. But that was a huge overpay for what he actually was. But I was injury bound. I had so many injuries, and that was just one player that I was able to just snag from. Not really snag, but I got bamboozled. But
willingly,
it was just it was willingly. Like I knew it, but it's such a fun way to do it. So yeah, that would be another one of just no vetoes and then no trade deadline.
You hit on something that I think a lot of people kind of don't grasp, but it's usually managers who are feel slighted by something else that happened in a transaction in the league. And it's that separation between a bad trade and collusion, because bad trades are part of the game, and in particularly when you get in Dynasty, because there are so many different ways that we can value the various assets, so many different plans as to how a franchise wants to move forward, when is it trying to contend, that we can create very different valuations of things. One of the leagues that one of my very first commissioner leagues in Dynasty, the very first trade that happened in this league was a manager trading away all of their draft picks for the next 2 years for about 3 or 4 players. And it's a hideously terrible deal for that guy. It's awful, but his explanation, I did reach out and say, hey, make sure this isn't a mistake. This is actually what you intended. And he said, yeah. And he said, I don't value rookies. So I'd rather have people who I know do well. And so I'd rather get those now and play with these players for a few years instead of these rookies that I don't know anything about. And it altered the balance of power in the league for a couple of years. But at the end of the day, it's like, well, I mean, who am I to say that that's not the way he should value his draft picks? It's not, but how am I to say that he shouldn't do it that way? I certainly would not.
Correct.
So, and I think you also hit on the personalities also get into this too with vetoes. That just isn't really objective. It's I'm mad at you, so therefore I'm going to veto your trade.
Correct. And I see that a ton. And in work leagues, those are where you get the newbies that like really haven't done fantasy football. Because in work leagues, you are, at least in my life, you're grabbing people that really don't know football, but you want just the camaraderie of a work league. And then they are like, hey, don't do that trade, or like, and then it's just so toxic within the actual league. So it's definitely that. And then I know that there are dynasty leagues that set like a certain standard. So like in your bylaws, if you have like keep trade cut, for instance, if you put in the trade and it is off by so much value, then it is not going to pass. So I know that there are things like that. But overall, the new people need to also learn from their mistakes on these. Like I totally understand trading away your value, or trading away your capital for players. That I've done it too, but just understanding that value is a huge learning curve for newer dynasty players, and they'll get it, but it definitely takes a toll when you have a bunch of sickos or people that have been doing this for a while now, and they just absolutely reap the benefits, and just obtain that power. And you're just looking at the one new manager and you're just like, come on.
Ironically, as that trade is now, we're now in the final year of the ramifications of that trade. But the manager who acquired all those picks can't use them, so because they already have a full bench, so we're actually getting them at fire sale prices ourselves. So it's really funny how that has worked out over time.
That's hilarious.
That, he's got 2027 first that he can't use, so we're trying to find a way to pry those away from that manager. But let's shift over a little bit. You were talking earlier now about going to on Twitter and talking about different rules for leagues and really kind of setting up, for lack of a better way of describing it, kind of that ideal BOAT league you have. But before we get into that specifically, why did you even go down that road of going to a place of nurturing wellness like Twitter and say, hey, let's talk about ideal rules for a league and help me figure those out. What was the motivation behind that?
Personally, I wanted to learn myself. So that was one of the biggest reasons. So it's really just learning for myself, and then just kind of being creative in the space and teaching other people like what other ways. There are so many formats and so many different ways of setting a rule, and I think that you just need to find the setting that suits your league. Really work with your managers and find that.
Has anything surprised you in terms of the feedback or the comments that you've gotten on some of these rule concepts?
One of the big ones, I am a huge fob waivers type of commissioner. I love the fob. I love having like that monopoly money. I do 100 in the in season, 100 in the off season. One of the comments that I got was in Dynasty, we can kind of go back to that inverse order of waivers. And to me, I was like, you definitely can. I personally love like the bidding process of it. I think that is just so much fun. Cause like the top trending player on like Sleeper or something like that, when your rosters are that deep and he's available, that would go to the inverse order of the standings. I don't want it for redraft. I don't want to go inverse order of standings. I like fob, but for Dynasty, I was like, oh yeah, I don't mind it. I don't mind it.
You just every week it'd still be whoever's at the bottom has first option, or is it like a rolling thing, which is sort of the weird kind of compromise you sometimes see between the two?
It was just the inverse order of the standings, so it wasn't a rolling waivers, which again, it kind of surprised me because I've definitely seen the rolling waivers more so in redraft, but the fob is what I like.
Okay. Well, if you were going to set up your ideal league today, and that is sort of the basic premise of what you're doing right now online, so you may not have your rule sets quite there yet. But what would some of the rules look like?
I will say that my home league, Dynasty League, again, is the most fun league. I wouldn't necessarily do all of these rules for the stereotypical like public league where the commissioner has just a bunch of the same kind of leagues. But this one is my absolute favorite league. It's a 12 team. We have 3 divisions of 4. It's 0.5 PPR. Then it's 0.75 tight end premium. We have our lottery. We have conditional trades. Which that just brings a whole new mix to it. There's taxi stealing, and then there's taxi moves as well. And these are such fun settings. And again, be creative with your leagues. Have you ever heard of taxi stealing before?
I have not heard of it, but I can kind of imagine what that might look like.
So it is.
I assume it looks like it does in the NFL, where you can just go get somebody off someone else's taxi squad if you want them.
Absolutely. So that's exactly what it is. And so like if you have a first round talent, and so this started off like you wouldn't want to have your Jeremiah Loves on the taxi squad.
Right.
Like
you shouldn't do that, but you could.
Absolutely. So like if you have your if you don't go off of max points 4, you could put Jeremiah Love on your taxi squad and then just like tank because there's a kind of that loophole. This created that where the taxi stealing, you could offer a first round pick for a first round talent. And the same thing for a second round pick, you could offer a second round pick. And you have 24 hours to decide whether to move them off your taxi squad into your active lineup or make that trade with that manager. And it's a lot of communication between so like all the requests are screenshotted and sent to me, just so I can verify that this is an actual trade that might happen and things like that. So it's a very fun way of doing it. But yeah, the hit the basics of the 12 team. I love divisions. I love divisions because you don't see them often, but like when you really go into them, and just like have those rivalries and everything that of the 4 teams, because you play them two times a year. It's just like the NFL. Like I love settings that are similar to the NFL, and I try my best in that league in particular to make sure that it feels like you're an actual GM.
Let's talk conditional trades for a minute, because that is something that we actually have allowed in the bylaws of most of the leagues that I am the commissioner of, the Dynasty leagues anyway. Even though the platforms that we use don't actually allow them to happen, they have to be maintained separately and outside of the platform, which is a pain for the commissioner. At this point, I've never had one made on my watch. But talk about what conditional trades are, how you implement those, and what's the allure of them.
I love conditional trades because it's not just like all right, I'm going to take an additional fourth or an additional third from you. It is like, so you might have 227 first, and we're not sure where that pick's going to land. So I'm going to trade you Matthew Stafford, and if you become like the champion of the league, I want that lower pick rather than your 27 first. So things like that's really, it just adds to the creativity of trades too when you're negotiating. That makes it so much fun. Because it's not always thought about. It's like, okay, you don't have much draft capital, so how else can I make this trade? There was one trade that I did. It was when Aaron Rodgers was still with the Packers, and Jordan Love was the backup. It was a conditional trade where I wanted Jordan Love, but I only wanted Jordan Love and this pick if Aaron Rodgers moved on. And so we got it done, and it was a fun trade. It takes a lot of work on a commissioner's standpoint too, because one thing that I like to do is in the notes section under players, actually put that condition within the trade, just so you have that to go back to. One thing that I really want Sleeper to do is to actually allow you to do that on the picks too. Have like a player's note on picks would be awesome, because we can even dive deeper into that too. But yeah, conditional trades are just a fun way of doing it.
And if you're listening to this or watching, you're still confused as to kind of what those look like, think about how the NBA does that, because that's where a lot of these kinds of conditional trades exist. When you talk about, draft picks that are, lottery protected or something like that, that's what a conditional trade is. That means that whatever the trade piece is, it becomes something different if a condition does or does not happen. Which is one reason why it becomes an administrative nightmare for a commissioner, because Sleeper and the other platforms are not set up for that. So it has to be completely managed outside of the platform itself. But I'm with you. I think it's a lot of fun to have that sort of flexibility, because, I know certainly that I've been involved with trades where my expectation was that one one manager was going to have a worse record than another, and I wound up with the wrong draft pick because the two teams were in different positions in the standings than I was expecting, and I got the worst one instead of the better one, or even worse, I gave up the better one instead of the worst one. So those are good ways to kind of take care of that. Let's do on the PPR tight end premium for just a second, because I think you said you got half point PPR, 3/4 point tight end premium. How did you land on those two?
So half point PPR is just something that I really enjoy. The standard is just not something that I do, and it's not like a majority. I don't think that there's many leagues out there. I know that they're out there that have just the standard, but I think standard, and then the 1 point PPR. 1 point PPR, I think, is just fine. A lot of leagues do it, but I love that balance of the 0.5. I love the balance of the how many yards that you actually get, and you're not getting a full point for just going down with 1 yard. It's not just a dump off and you go down. Like, there is some actual value in how many yards you actually get on top of like catching the ball. The 0.75 tight end premium, that is just a juggernaut. It is an absolute beast when you have those tight ends. The tight end landscape has really developed. It's gotten way bigger than just hey, I'm going to have Travis Kelce or Gronk. Like, it's not, it's way more than that now, which is awesome. So I'm waiting for the day that we actually move kind of down, but I love the 0.75 tight end premium. It makes those adjustments of like, okay, should I actually have that additional tight end in my flex rather than like what you would normally see, and like you're going to just take a shot in the dark with a wide receiver. So it is, those are my favorite settings is 0.5 PPR, and then the 0.75 tight end premium.
Yeah, for folks who are newer to the game of fantasy football, newer to Dynasty, you may not understand what standard is because it's not really called that anymore. It is non-PPRs, where there's nothing for a reception at all. It's a throwback to an earlier era of fantasy football when the running backs ruled everything, and it was yardage and touchdowns, and that was it. Scoring has gotten a lot more interesting as the computers have gotten better at calculating things. Back when you were having to take paper box scores as a commissioner and add that stuff up yourself, you didn't want to add up a whole lot of things. So yards and touchdowns was pretty easy to add up, and that's what you ended up with. So those were considered standard scoring back in the day. I've moved around a little bit on what I think is the preferred, and I'm kind of landing now on half PPR, half PP1D, which is a half point per first down, so that we are balancing out another aspect of things, which is what I call the Rachaad White rule, which is Rachaad White needs to pick up 2 yards for a first down. He gets 2 yards in the first down. So in regular scoring, that's 0.2, and that's that. But if you add that half point for first down, he gets 0.7, and he's moved the chains. And so that makes certain plays more valuable than others because they do result in actual movement down the field. And as you say, if you catch a ball and you fall down, that shouldn't just be a point because you didn't do anything. You might as well not have caught the ball other than it gave you the point. Are there any rules that are kind of non-starters for you? Like you'll never put them in your leagues. And if a friend of yours said, "Hey, I've got this new Dynasty league, do you want to go in?" and you see this rules in there, you'd say, "Yeah, no thanks."
Yeah, I think one of the big things is the kickers and defenses in particular, just because they are so random. They are so random on a season that, like, I understand. Like, fantasy football is luck. Like, there is some skill to it, but a lot of it is luck. And when we can take some of that out, that is kind of what I want to build around. Kickers, you can get creative, but really, I mean,
Why?
I don't.
Why?
Correct, correct. Like, I don't think that you need them. So kickers and defense would be absolutely. That is exactly my reaction would be if I saw one of my buddies, hey, you want to join? There's kickers and defense. No, thank you.
Well, Jake Cieli would love to hear that. He is the head of the band kickers caucus, #band kickers. So he would be very, very thrilled to hear that you are with him on that. They have no purpose or point in Dynasty.
Absolutely not. And I've done like leagues where it is fun, where you get creative with kickers and like have like punters as well. Like, I think that one of my buddies wanted to try that, so we tried that. It was fun, but it just is not what I want in my leagues. And then not requiring like future capital payments. That's just a tough one when you're not doing that, and people are able to just kind of walk after they trade everything and go win a championship and then take off and things like that. It's just not a setting that I want. I want to see that in your bylaws. Also shallow leagues in Dynasty. It's just not something that I necessarily like. Shallow, the deeper the better. I think when you have like the sleepers of the sleepers on your fantasy teams, I think that makes it just 20 times more fun. When I'm seeing like eight starters, or like 7 starters, like that is just something that I personally am not a fan of. I love the 10 and 11 starters. Again, that's personally. And then no bylaws. If you don't have bylaws, then I'm worried to start the league. And that's just not the first initial thought of what I want in my leagues. So if I know you and you don't have bylaws, that's a whole new topic. Right. But if I'm joining a random league, or I'm picking up an orphan or something like that, I want to see the bylaws and I want to see what's happening within those. And then there are so many scams on fantasy football. I think it's gotten better, but there's also so many different avenues. But the Venmo and Cash App for public leagues, that can't happen. You need to use the fan creds. You need to use the league safes and things like that for your leagues. Just again, it just makes for a better league. There's trust in it. And then you get approval from like all your managers of like when payments should be made and things like that.
Mm-hmm. One more note on kickers. I'm no longer in this league because it's on MFL, and I'm just out on that. But it was over there because it was something you could do, and it was that you could have kickers, but they were on your flex only. You were not required to have any. If you didn't want any, you didn't have to have any. But there were scoring rules that might make it desirable to actually, put Brandon Aubrey as a flex if you wanted to.
Yep.
So I am okay with that at a dynasty level. If you want to do that flex, or if you want to add like IDP slots in kind of the same sort of way, I think that's a great way to open up the player pool and strategy. And if another manager didn't want to deal with it, then they don't have to. But instead, unfortunately, it was on a platform I don't want to be playing on if I can avoid it. And so I had to leave that one as I for my own health and safety and sanity. But it wasn't over the kicker. It was over the platform.
Yep.
Let's talk a little bit about, because we talked earlier about the need to make some kind of emergency changes in the league over COVID and Damar Hamlin and some other sort of situations. What's that's a sort of kind of an urgent sort of, you're forced to do this because of circumstances. What about just regular old run-of-the-mill rule changes in a dynasty league? What's the best approach for a commissioner to take in terms of changing rules that were established for last season and they want to change them going forward? What would you say is the best way or process for that to happen?
The best way that I've done it is I'm getting all these rule changes. So if you are a manager in one of my leagues, you are able to send me league changes throughout the season until that February date, and we have a cutoff date a week before of like when you're able to submit your league changes, and then we vote in February. It's in the off season, early off season, and during this process, we're all able to vote. And for that, it's in the off season, which is huge because then it's a majority vote. I don't do super majority just because I like changes in my league. I like to keep it fresh. Majority, just having that over the 50% is something that I like because not everyone likes those changes, but that I think that is good. It's good to just refresh the league a little bit. So that is one way that I have really liked doing, and I don't see why I would change it. But like have that cutoff period so people are actually thinking about that. I communicate this constantly, like, hey, we're in the middle of the season. Have there been any changes or thoughts that that you would think that would be beneficial for this league, and things like that. So really talking with your managers and making sure that they know that, like, if you're not happy with something, I want to know about it so we can further better our league. So it's really communicating with your managers and having that date that you're actually voting on, rather than like, okay, hey, so and so brought this up. Should we vote on it? Like that. That's just not a way that I want to do it. It gets into a thing where like you build a league that you are proud of and that you're excited about, and then there's a manager that has an idea that you're just like, I don't know if that should be added, but I still don't want to be the Emperor Palpatine. Just do whatever I want. I want to hear from everyone. So it's really talking through that, and just having that vote.
Are there any rules that just should never be changed in a dynasty league? Once they're set, that ought to be it forever.
I think one of the biggest things is don't take away from the league. So like what I'm talking about is if you are super flex, don't take away that super flex and then go one QB. I think that there's adaptations that you can do to add a super flex if you are a single quarterback and then add a super flex. I think that there's ways of doing that. But when you're changing the full format of your leagues, and taking away if you're taking away 2 wide receiver spots, if you're taking away things like that, you are changing the whole dynamic of your league. There are value, especially when you are in like bigger leagues of like people that know what they're doing, and you're changing the settings so drastically that like the values are completely shifting to be like super quarterback heavy or super running back heavy. That's where some rule changes, like that is a full new league that you need to start rather than change it within your own league.
Yeah, I probably might even be a little tighter on that than you are. I think any change in the number of quarterbacks you play is a bridge too far for a dynasty league, because people have made decisions over a period of time, including out several years in advance, based on a certain basic understanding of the rules. And so to me, that one would be too far. I would consider, at least take under advisement, an idea of adding, a required wide receiver or something like that to a position, because it would just come if it came out of a flex or something. But even at that, I'm like, well, but there are guys who haven't drafted receiver with that in mind because they built up a more running back heavy team, and now suddenly we've changed the value of the position. So to me, that once you've kind of locked in that basic format of what the lineup looks like, I'm really hesitant to want to change any of that without just starting a different league to try a new concept. Like going, if you've got a group of guys who've been playing one QB leagues for 20 years and they decide, hey, let's do Superflex, just create a new Superflex league. And the ones who want to do it will do it. And the ones that don't. And you keep your existing league happy and rolling along. But I'm open to it, man, because I mean, you did say something about going from one QB to Superflex. There's ways to do it. So I'm open to hearing what that might look like, and if you've ever tried it before, and what the results of that might have been.
And so one of the big things is, like I say, like I think that you would be able to add, just not subtract positions. One of the big things with making changes like that is this isn't one rule that you are voting on and then it's implemented the next season. Like this is a huge. So if you're adding like a Superflex, you need 2 or 3 years, and those are also going into the vote of like when it's going to be implemented. So you all are aware. So like really those rebuilding teams are like you can sell off your older quarterbacks, and like there's always a manager that has a ton to start, and you're like, okay, so there are learning curves with it. But I would definitely say the biggest strategy, the biggest like benefit would be voting on when to implement, as well as like just getting approval from everyone that we will be switching to Superflex. It will just be down the road in like 2 or 3 years.
That's smart, I think, if you're going to do something of that change. And it also just speaks to just generally, you don't have to make a change that takes effect this year. You can set up something for the future and give everybody, particularly in Dynasty, that opportunity to adapt. And redraft doesn't matter because you're as long as you haven't drafted yet, then it does. You can draft to whatever change you make, including going to Superflex or going to the league I'm in right now, where you can play up to 4 quarterbacks. So we knew that going in. So all but me drafted accordingly, and me value-based draft my way into a hole that I will probably never get out of in this league. I'll just be an ATM for it for the foreseeable future until I can hit on some rookie draft picks over the next, 6 years, and then I'll have some quarterbacks. So let's talk though. If someone's listening and saying, I want to do a startup, I want to put in some rules, I want to really be creative and create something I want to do, is what point should those rules basically be locked, at least for year one? Or how much flexibility should a commissioner, or let's look at it a different way, how much flexibility should a commissioner give themselves to kind of negotiate their way through getting enough people to be in this league from day one?
Personally, I think when you, even before you start recruiting, you have your rules set. Like I said, the best leagues that I have put together are the ones that I am proud of, that I am passionate about. You have an idea of who you want to be in your leagues and things like that, but really, I like having all of my rules set beforehand. I don't think much should be like changed after the fact. I like having those settings set and then waiting. Then if you do have suggestions, because I do want to be flexible, and I want this league to be what you also want as well, but it's going to start by default what I built and what I am proud of, and then going into next season slowly adapting into our league rather than my league.
Yeah, I love that. No, it's kind of my philosophy as well. I think going into in year one, it kind of has to be the commissioner's league, because it is the commissioner's vision as to what this was going to be. And then at that point, the commissioner becomes one of 12, just a managing partner in that. And I just really love that idea of our league. I think that's really something. Well, man, if anyone could just sort of remember one thing that we've talked about over the last hour or so, hour plus or so, one piece of advice, one rule, one idea, what would you have them remember?
I would say get creative with your leagues. It is such a fun atmosphere when you are developing new rules into your leagues, whether that be a new league, whether that be just an adjustment to a scoring setting or things like that, bring it up to the commish, bring it up to just talk about it throughout your league mates. I love having like the three-headed monster of like having like a competition committee and things like that. And just really talking through these things, because if they're on your competition committee, that they are kind of like the sickos as well of like just constantly wanting to listen and just dive deep into fantasy football. And that is just something that I love. And so really get creative with your leagues. There are so many ways to go about one single rule within your leagues. And so I would say get creative with it. Also communicate with your leagues. There's nothing worse than kind of not knowing what the next plan is, or so like things that I really like to do is having like an important dates document. This is something that is just pinned. Even if it's just like, hey, the Super Bowl is coming up. Granted, everyone should know that the Super Bowl is coming up, but like having the Senior Bowl in there, have your roster cut dates, have things like that like keep them engaged and understand what's happening next, but also keep yourself in line of like, oh, this is where like I send the 2-year review or something like that, where you're kind of going over like what the values of like the draft picks and things like that you had 2 years ago and things like that. So get creative with it and communicate with your leagues would be one of the two big things that I would want everyone to listen to.
Yeah, if you could go back in time and undo any decision that you have ever made as a commissioner, what would you undo, and why would you do it, or undo it, I should say?
I think one of the biggest things that, again, like the young Luke would want to redo would be just like the vetting process of getting the right managers. I know that there have been times where I'm like, oh, like this you're one of my buddies. I know that you are a good friend, but you should stay in redraft. And I just knew that going into it. Like you don't care enough. You don't have that vetting. Like you don't have that, like the off season constantly want to talk ball, things like that. So like really the vetting process would be something that if I could go back in time, there would be some managers that maybe wouldn't be too happy with me of like not being in the league, but like overall, because there's been times where they just like, oh, you were right, like this wasn't for me, but like we could have like not gone that route, and I could have had a manager that's actually wants to dive deep into like trades and everything like throughout the year. So vetting process would be definitely the one that I would like to, bring back.
I think that's really an excellent point there, Luke, because when we're setting up leagues, we run into a couple of traps. One is that we have a friend who's kind of interested, but they really have never done it before, and they're really not sure what they're getting into. And maybe they're used to the 4-month-long rhythm of a redraft season in Dynasty. There is no off season, so it is year round. They have to stay engaged, have to do things like rookie evaluation that they've never had to do before. And then the other, I think, is sometimes we get desperate to fill the spots because we're trying to get a league off the ground, and we've been stuck at 9 players for a while, and we fill it with who we can, and that's often a disservice to the other league members who are there, because you end up replacing those guys in a year or two, and potentially with a mismanaged roster that is now a liability for recruiting new managers to come in. So I think those are really important things that we can kind of get ourselves impatient sometimes when it comes to. I think the key is recruit a really good group of people. And if that takes more than one season, then spend that time and get it right.
Yep. I couldn't have said it better myself. The amount of times where it it has taken a while to fill a spot, because when I'm recruiting, I am trying to not scare off managers, but I want them to know that like people are going to hound you in the trades, in the DMs. You are going to get a ton of trades, and especially if you're taking over an orphan or something like that, they're going to try to take advantage and like send you just crap that's not going to be these good trades. And you just really have to talk through with them, all the new managers, and just make the league what you want. And and the vetting process, and just know what they are getting into.
Well, Luke, this has been outstanding. Thanks so much for spending some time with me. We're recording this on a Tuesday night, so whenever you are watching or listening to this, it is when that is. But we are up late here this evening having this conversation about commissionering. But before you go, Luke, tell everyone where folks can find you on the interwebs and what you are up to these days as we crash into yet another NFL season.
Absolutely. Well, you can find me BOAT Commish FF on X or Twitter, Discord. I'm even on Reddit. I'm always open for a conversation. If you have any questions or anything like that, shoot them my way. And if I don't have the answer, I will try to find it for you. And then more platforms to come. There are some great things that are happening over at Dynasty. And it has been an awesome experience. And I continue to grow in this platform. And I just want to be available for others and just continue to meet these wonderful people in this space. And I just want to dive deep into this commissioner content, and we'll see where it goes.
Indeed, we will. Well, thanks so much for that. And we will here on Dynasty Compass every once in a while continue to contribute to that commissioner content space as well. It's an important aspect of Dynasty and something a lot of other shows ignore because it is in the weeds and kind of nuts and boltsy in a way that isn't nearly as sexy as talking about whether Quentin Johnson is in fact going to be a year 3 breakout. He's not. But that said, and thank you all too for watching or listening, whether you've been on YouTube or Apple, Spotify, your favorite audio platform. If you found this to be engaging and interesting and it's going to help you manage your league, let us know that. Drop a comment here on YouTube or send us a tweet or a DM. We both pay a lot of attention to those on social media, so we're both very easy to find. I'm at Jeff Blaylock. He's at BOAT Commish FF. So just reach out to us, stay with us, and come back next week for another outstanding episode of Dynasty Compass.